Morning, everyone. So this is Ranush with you, and welcome to TUSB Conversations. It is hosted by the Outstanding Speakers Bureau. So TUSB works closely with some of the leading minds from across the globe who bring their cutting-edge perspective on the biggest ideas that are shaping the world today. They customize various kind of interventions for their clients, from webinars, knowledge series to social media influencer engagements, workshops, leadership coaching, and advisory, and lots more. It's a good day today, and today we are here to talk about U 3.0 in the age of AI. And that is also the title of the book written by our guests today, Anand Tamboli and Amit Dangle. Anand Tamboli is an entrepreneur, award-winning author, global speaker, futurist, and highly sought after thought leader. He specializes in areas that intersects with technology and people. He also goes by the moniker of double brain thinker. And my other guest today, joining him for the conversation, is Amit Dangle. He has been working as a marketer with IT companies for around 2 decades. Besides his profession, he's been very active with NASSCOM and Computer Society of India. On that note, Anand and Amit, thank you very much for taking out the time. And for the people who have joined in, we have both our guests today. And that's precisely what we're going to talk about. That, in this entire situation of AI, you open the internet, you do a search, and you feel that, am I safe or not? And that's the biggest question. When it comes to your survival, right? The survival part, when it hits in, we don't know what's going to happen. And that's why, to decipher this entire complex, how do we navigate this maze, let me post my first question to Anand. Anand, you've written this book, and this is the first question, right? How do we make sure that our jobs are safe? Are we safe or not? First, let me ask that. What's going to happen to us?
Hey, thanks, Anis, for that question. And opening with a big question, I would say this is very common question. Every time someone or I go and talk about AI, that conversation is incomplete unless you answer that question. Which job will go? Our job saves? Will AI take your jobs? And I think the answer is not straightforward. The answer is yes and no. And sometimes that's an annoying answer. So let me decipher it a little bit more as to why I say what I say. So in short term, the jobs will be gone. A lot of jobs will be gone, displaced. And there is a reason for that. And we have to go back and see how innovation works in a typical economy. And then you will be able to closely relate as to why that would happen. So typically there are three kinds of innovations. So one would be incremental innovation. The other would be efficiency innovation, and third one we call it a disruptive innovation. And you could look at these innovation terms from two different perspectives. One is from a job perspective and other from the capital perspective. And these two things eventually shape the economy. So incremental innovation typically is only good getting better. So you have a product already that's running in the market, no problems whatsoever, and you try to improve it and it goes a little bit better. But when that happens, there's no real change in the process or in the delivery in the market anywhere. So there is no change in the jobs either. And because there is no change in the job, nothing much has changed. Even there is no change in the capital availability. So there is little change in both of that. And most of the companies are doing it anyway, knowingly, unknowingly. The second kind of innovation, which is efficiency innovation, as the name suggests, that's where a lot of things change. And by definition, efficiency means output upon input. So if output is your product, if it is service, the input is raw material or what goes in the product, including your manpower, the number of people working on delivering that product. So if you want to increase efficiency, obviously you want to reduce the input. And with the advent of AI or any other automation tool, that's what is happening. So every time organization wants to gain efficiency, jobs are lost. And when jobs are lost or input reduces, eventually it frees up the capital. So you have a lot of capital to utilize. Now it is up to organization, it is up to the company how they put that capital to actual use. Like do they want to hoard the capital, or do they want to invest into a new market or a new product? And that's where the third part comes in, which we call as a disruptive innovation. And disruptive innovation essentially creates jobs. And because it is creating jobs and new product, it needs a lot of money. That's where capital is used to build that economy. So let me put this in perspective with a very commonplace example. We all know mainframe computers. When they were invented, when people were working with mainframe computers, hardly 4 or 5 companies such as IBM's and others were using mainframe computers, and nobody had access to it. Very costly computers.
Correct.
Then they changed to desktop computers. So the innovation happened and desktop computers came in. Then more people were able to afford that computer. Desktop to laptop, and laptop to now mobile phones. Now, pretty much a mobile phone power is equivalent to a moon shuttle that was sent a long time back.
Yeah, that's true. I agree with it. Yeah.
And if you look at that, like if everyone has that mobile phone, right from 4 or 5 mainframe computers that only a handful of people could afford, to millions of mobile phones. So that's where the disruption has happened, and product has gone mainstream that almost everybody can afford. But that also means that instead of making 4 computers, now you have to make millions of mobile phones, which creates more jobs, which needs more people, more capital, plants, etc. That's where this disruptive innovation actually creates jobs. But in case of AI, at the moment, the focus is efficiency. So whether we are talking about predictive maintenance, whether we're talking about customer service improvement, and improvement by means replacing IVR or chatbots, etc., it's all focused on improving efficiency, which in short means all these jobs that cater to these services or products are going away. So in short, they will go away. However, once enterprises or organizations use these efficiency measures and free up the capital, then it is up to them to put that capital into new markets, in expansion, in democratization of the product, and that's when the jobs will be created. Right. So that is not going to happen simultaneously. There will be a long time gap in between.
Right. Okay. So that's interesting, because you've raised 3 points and people can see it on the screen. But how do you decipher and understand, out of this, what's the best innovation? Because options are always there for us. But how do organizations and people decide, and leaders decide that, okay, out of this is which we should go for?
Right. So interestingly, almost everyone would agree that the incremental innovation is kind of very little of importance. Everybody is doing it. You do it very often. So that's really a gray area. You don't need to really decide on it. The decision is between efficiency and disruptive. And in my view, both cannot happen simultaneously. It's a very rare occurrence when both happen simultaneously. So right now, efficiency innovation will go first, which will take jobs and free up capital. That's when organizations will benefit, but overall economy will see a little bit of a negative impact. Now it's up to organizations to come out of that and use that capital to put that into disruptive innovation and create more jobs and boost the economy. So ideally, if you are an organization which, not just after money, but also look at the economy and overall society, then disruptive innovation is where you need to be focusing on.
Right. The other part, because you're talking about organizations, right? How can organizations get better? I think let me first ask this question to Amit, because Amit has been there in the field for the last 20 years, and he's seen working with multiple organizations that how these specific tools the organizations can use, and then I'll come to you over this. Amit, what's your thought on it?
So, Danish, first of all, thanks for having me in this conversation. So what is happening is the organizations, do they do they first of all realize where they are, right? Vis-a-vis what's going to happen. That's the first thing, right? So the realization of it. And when you talk of the change in terms of the people, what's happening is their attitude towards people has been the age old, right? They have not been really investing in the people in L&D for a very long time. And that is where I see the main crux of the problem is going to lie. And when you look at the people or the human capital development aspect of it, what's happening is you see in an organization like everybody is modernized, operations are modernized, finance are modernized themselves, sales, marketing, right? We modernize ourselves. The only function, so to say, which is not really modernized is HR, and part of it, bigger part of is learning and development, right? I think that is where the crux of the problem, according to me, lies. So one is organization realizing where they stand, how the things are going to move and been impacted with AI, and how do you really they make the people adaptable, right? Because today, if you look at it, right, it's not the machinery, it's the people who drive the business, right? And if the people are not been changing, then your organization is going to be, not be, they'll never be able to compete with others, right? So that's the bigger problem. So that said, that I think there are three big issues that I think today plague learning and development, so to say. Right? The first is they have not been able to sort of build like a direct connection with the profitability of a company or a revenue of a company, right? So no L&D or no HR guy says that, because I will do this, this is the impact on the company, right? So that's one part of it. The second thing that the L&D guys they continuously keep doing is, their KPI is always, hours of training or hours of learning per employee, right? So the quality aspect itself sort of misses. So when they sort of, build their budgets and build their plans, the way they look at it is, this year 20 hours per person, next year is going to be 25% per person, right? That's what they kind of continuously keep looking at. And third is, like Anand said, right, the incremental efficiency and the disruptive. I think HR is still stuck into that incremental value addition, right? So what they do is, today they give 5 functional trainings, tomorrow they're going to give 6 functional training, 7 functional training. They're not able to reach to the higher level, right? The higher level of L&D, where people can learn to learn. That's one part of it. People can look at adaptability as a facet to sort of up their ante, right? And that is where I think one of the problems that I see organizations abating this challenge altogether.
That's a real challenge. Anand, over to you. How do you look at it when it comes to organizations? So how can they get better?
Yeah. So Danish, look, when I worked with mid to large scale organization and sometimes extra large scale organization, I realized that every time they want to go with any change initiative, any digital transformation, or any other name that you call it, Six Sigma, Lean, etc., they are always stuck into understanding that, okay, we want to do this, but never asking a question, or rarely someone asking a question as to what we really want to achieve by doing this, like where we want to go. And it was okay in the past when the rate of change was not as fast as it now. Now really you have to decide, if we do this, then what we really want to achieve in a longer term. And that's where this futuristic perspective of an organization, leadership comes into picture. And there are 7 characteristics I put across most of the times as to how do you identify an organization, whether it is future ready or not. So these 7 characteristics, typically, the first one is the foresight skills. So most of the people, and not just the senior leadership, most of the people, even up to the mid managers, do have these foresight skills. They are able to understand what is coming, not just from the front, but even from sideways, from their competitors, but not just only competitors, but also allied industries as to how this overall market is working, how the economy is working. So they have this foresight. The second skill set And it's not a skill set, but it's more of a culture, it's an innovation culture. So a lot of times you will see people speak about creativity and they stay at that, okay, get creative, but creativity is not really commercial in nature. So if you put a commercial aspect to it, it becomes innovation. And innovation needs a very different culture to nurture, to foster. The third one is the technology backbone, and a lot of people must have said about this, that no company can stay away from being technology company. So even if you are selling diapers, you still have to be technology company, and that's the key message out of that. The fourth aspect here is agility, and COVID has proven that. So any company that was agile to change and make quick changes has not suffered as much. Then we have platform thinking. Now this is a new way of thinking, and I think going forward, a company to be used and treated as a platform is going to be a key to proliferating your potential and even the market presence. Then we have experimentation culture, and this is closely tied with the innovation part as to how quickly you experiment, because the market is changing so fast, situations are different every single month, every single week. How do you experiment and quickly get to the point and quickly decide doing something? And lastly, it is about speed, like how fast you reach to your destination or how fast you move from goal to goal. And all these 7 aspects, unless all 7 aspects are covered, I think it's highly difficult for organization to be future ready and moving towards a positive economy. But even in that, I think when we look at the HR angle, as Amit spoke, the trainings and how they are building the human capital, I think 3 key characteristics would stand out from this, and they are foresight skills, the agility and speed. Agility and speed are essentially somewhere outcomes of your organization structure and the way information flows, the way information, the people take decision out of that information. And it's largely dependent on people. Other parts such as innovation or experimentation culture and those things, those are all culture dependent. So once the people are there, once people are capable of doing things, people are capable of seeing what is coming from far ahead, I think these all things can be covered. So it all boils down to having people capability. Right. And if we are only stuck in just moving around the incremental improvements and changes, we can't really go to this point.
Absolutely.
Right. Guys, for the people who are listening, if you have any questions, you can just write in the chat box and Anand and Amit will take it up. So I think, Anand, I do have a question. I think let's this conversation get over and then we will start taking questions. Amit, coming to you, because what Anand was talking on, right? So if he's given this framework, do you think organizations were not aware of it? And where was the hurdle which people not able to implement it? How do you think that gap can be filled up using the tools which Amit has given us?
Okay, so I think innovation, the adaptability and the speed, right? As I was sort of answering the first question where we talked about it is driven by people, and today what's happening is people, typically the employees, right? They stay at level 1 where they're incrementally changing. So they're functional experts, right? How do you bring in the fresh breath of air? How do you bring in the fresh thinking? I think that is only possible when organization wants the people to scale that incremental, value addition to something more, right? So something more where they're becoming efficient, they're becoming disruptive, and that change in thought process is nothing but thought leadership, right? So I think the idea, and that we also mentioned in a book somewhere, right? If you remain at level 1, which is incremental, you'll never be able to compete with others. Companies need to focus on how do you really drive people towards thought leadership. How do you really ensure that you build a culture where people accept that they need to learn, and people, when they learn, how do they dispose of, or how do they disseminate the knowledge within within their company, the society, and the industry in general, right? I think that is where the focus has to be.
So coming to you, Amit, I think because Anand has made a point, how do you see this gap, right? I mean, no, so okay, so I have to ask you because you mentioned about your book right now. So what's the story behind it, right? You 3.0, that's a very interesting thing. So we were just talking about, Life 2.0, and then suddenly there is this 3.0. What's the book and where did this idea came from, and what can people get out of it?
Yeah, sure.
Just to add to that, if people who are part of the webinar, if you want the book, you can DM us. Anand and Amit would be more than happy to share a copy with you. Or if you want to buy bulk orders, that can also be arranged. So Anand, over to you.
Yeah, let me begin because this is where I started this thinking about you 3.0 almost a year ago, and that thinking came up from a very frustrated work that I had with change management. So I have been working in change management for almost 15, 16 years. And, this is a common problem that, a lot of people would say, oh, people hate change or the people resist change. And that's not quite the case. People do want change, but there is also this interest not to change. And that always intrigued me as to what exactly is going in our minds, in people's mind, and why people want something better, but still don't want to do something to get to that better, and how things work. So I did speak with a number of people, especially mid managers and below, where this kind of a resistance or change is perceived to be coming from. And I realized something very fundamental, and this is not a groundbreaking idea per se, but the realization is very different from the perspective that we're looking at, is the way we think, right? And so I put this up in here as to how any general human being would think. The level one thinking, what we typically call, is your survival thinking, safety. And a lot of people have written about it, whether it's Abraham Maslow, whether someone else. We have known this fundamental, right? Everybody wants that shelter, food, water, just basic salary. If you're talking about employees, because I have my car, EMIs, family, etc. So I need to fulfill that no matter what I do. A lot of people just run this hand to mouth. So anything that threatens this part, people are not going to touch it. The second order thinking is a bit of a social and pleasure oriented limbic system, which gives you a kick when you have friends, when you have kind of this interaction with friends, social media, certifications. I won this award, I won that award. Today I became the best employee, I got a gift, etc. And a lot of change management initiatives always work in these two domains, with giving something out or sometimes indirectly threatening with the job loss or no increment, no promotion, that kind of thinking. And that leads to people succumbing to not really behaving in a positive manner to the change, any change. No initiative is untouched from this. And while they do that, they think that we want growth, which is third, the neocortex thinking, which is the higher order thinking. And that was an epiphany in a way that, okay, so we want this, but we treat like this. So this is the dissonance that we have in a way we treat our employees, in a way we treat people. And then when we look at it, that why people are not going up, and we say they are resisting. So how can we help to get people over with this level 1 and 2 so that they go to level 3, right? When organization wants growth, and a lot of us say that, right? This is a very common saying, that the strength of a chain is defined by the weakest element. The capacity of your organization to run any kind of a change, run any kind of a innovation or futuristic product is defined by a number of employees who are thinking in a growth zone. If majority of your employees and people are thinking in those level 1 and 2, I don't think organization can even think about going into growth zone. So how do we get people above the line, get them across this portion? And that's where this thinking started. I had a number of calls with Amit that, hey, this is what I'm thinking, how we can help people, how we can help employees to go above the level so that the next thing can happen, where the real crux is. And that's where the book idea started. And now Amit might be able to give you more as to how I bothered him for a long time.
So yeah, I think it's a pretty interesting story. And so just like Anand, one of the problems that and I'm sure all of us here, right, we keep thinking that as you sort of grow in your profession, it's like a pyramidal structure, right? As you grow up, there are a number of less opportunities on top, right? So imagine a pyramid that you're climbing in, and there are different floors out there. So you always keep wondering as why somebody goes up, gets promoted, while the rest of them stay at a level. And if you really compare them vis-a-vis from the functional perspective, right? Yeah. There's hardly a difference, right? So that was one of the challenges and the questions that I was kind of dwelling into. And now, add a different twist to this story, right? Add that, the staircases that you want to take to go up don't really take you to the upper floor, right? So that's like the dynamic nature what AI sort of brings you. Or right now, COVID is doing to you, right? So imagine the standard ways that we had to be presentable or to be visible to our management when we were physically talking to them, right? We are managing the team, getting the work done, right? Has suddenly changed. Now you're managing things remotely. How do you really manage things in such situations, right? So that was the question that we're dealing with. And of course, COVID hadn't happened by the time when you started, I think back in December 2019, right? But we were thinking about a disruption that's going to move this pyramid for sure, right? Scaling the pyramid as it is difficult in a disruptive situations like AI, it's going to be much more difficult. And we're trying to look for an answer in the existing literature, so to say. And as Anand said, right, we're talking to a lot of experts saying, what happens, right? How does one really, score over the other person? The answers that we got were, not really encouraging. Like, yeah, somebody is better than somebody else. And we said, why not really look under the hood, right? Why not really go and start? And then we started talking to people, right? And then we realized that those functional skills of those people are same, right? If you look at really 2-3 layers. So, for example, if you look at a manager, a senior manager, and a director, for example, right? The functional skill may not vary too much, right? But there's something special that each of them have to sort of develop. And then we realize that people who go up realize that they need to be thought leaders, right? I mean, thought leaders are again a very, very heavy word, and I think it gets used very loosely nowadays. But I think people who go up, they realize that they need to learn, they need to acquire knowledge, and they need to disseminate, they need to talk to people, they need to start building the relationships, right? So the 3 levels that Anand just explained in the brain, and we sort of keep those 3 levels, and that's our favorite part. So the first level is the functional. I keep saying that, right? So this is what you know as a software engineer, what I know, right? The second level is where who knows you, right? So as a software, how many people in my community, on my social network, right, know me as a software engineer, as a good software engineer, right? And sorry, the second level is who you know, right? The second level is where how many people you can reckon as experts in your field, and I want to be like that person. And third level is where who knows you, right? So that's the third level we are talking about. And the moment people start knowing you, that is where you are visible. That is where you sort of a brand within yourself. And I think that was sort of a push for us to articulate an approach to take people from level 1 to level 3.
Yeah, Amit, because you mentioned about us, right? There's a question which we have from the audience. It's anonymously posted. You're talking about us, all that, like one should do it, right? But the person is asking that this happens if the culture, if the organization of the culture is not about innovation, then how can individuals be like that? How far can an individual thrive in a situation if your organization is not willing to give you the tools and ready to experiment? I mean, if you cannot fail, then how do you succeed?
Right, right. So the growth that we are talking about here is not just professional, right? It is also personal. And I think the approach that we're talking about, though we keep saying that HR has to lead it or the organization has to lead the change per se, right? The individual also can lead the change, right? And the thinking of that, I need to be a brand which is recognized in my field is a thought that individual, if they can bear and can sort of work towards it, I guess their growth will be, of course, exceptionally better than the organization, and they may be privy to other opportunities to organizations which sort of, have a thriving, innovation culture.
Yeah.
Anand, you want to add something
yeah.
to this?
Yeah, and in fact, I'll add to that for the question that if you're struggling or frustrated that, okay, I can think about innovation or innovative ideas, but really the culture is not supporting. I think look at it this way, because what someone is not doing is probably not in our hands to control, but what we can do. And I have seen this with a lot of people who are frustrated saying that, okay, what can I do? I want to change, but not others. Can you be indispensable person, like who they cannot ignore? And that's where again we come back to this idea that, look, if you're just being one of the too many people who come up with the idea and go back, then probably you won't have that weightage. People won't give you enough time to listen to what you're saying. But you are known, right? If you go above that level, you make yourself known, not within just the company, but within the community, within the industry, that, okay, not just organization, but a lot of people, your peers and peers from other companies, other industry, recognize your potential, recognize your thinking, and they say that, yes, you have got some good idea. That's when your own company starts to look at you differently, that, okay, this person, if I don't listen, then this might, he or she might go and this idea sounds interesting, so someone else might take it. So I would rather do that. And that's where, the dynamic changes. So this dynamic, the changing of the dynamic is something that only you as an individual have the control of.
Okay, there's another question which is about AI. So Anand, I should direct this towards you. This is from Spriha. She's saying, what's the disruption in AI that's most eminent in companies should gear up for?
Okay,
and my question also along with Spriha, that which sectors should be more geared up? Is it the manufacturing, service, or any other one which I've left out?
I think at the moment, the first sector to hit is service sector. The white collar jobs are the ones which are getting more and more threatened day by day. And a lot of changes are easier because AI essentially, it's not the person. AI is a software. It's a software paradigm. So software, it's easy to change what is in a service domain. So that's where the first disruption is going to be. It's already happening, and we have seen in other developed countries such as Australia, where I live, and then in US and other markets, where people are already losing jobs. They are not being reskilled or transferred. They're just simply going away because of the chatbots being implemented, because of the automation being implemented. The service industry is definitely one. When it comes to manufacturing, you need a flavor of robotics, like physical, mechanical aspects, and which takes a lot of capital and time as well. So that's going to take some time, more time, before the manufacturing sector gets hit. The service sector is definitely, it's already started.
And the cost of in an organization, right? You're telling us, people losing their jobs, but hiring people and then reskilling them. If you do the cost analysis, then what works for organizations then?
Good point. In fact, Amit and I were talking about this yesterday, that if you look at the recruitment budget and your hiring budget, training budget. so recruitment and training, and there is it's disproportionately different and high in one side. So instead of recruiting someone, all right, can you train someone? And maybe Amit can put actual numbers to it. He has seen some of those numbers. Amit, would you like to put those numbers?
Yeah, I think what happens is if you look at, and specifically, I would probably focus on, say, IT sector, because that's where I belong to. I think in IT sector, the cost of hiring is, as Anand said, right, disproportionately high. By the time somebody leaves, the JD is out, interviews, hiring, the period by which the person joins, right, the training, right, that cost is at least 4 to 5 times higher than the company would spend on training the person, right? And that's very conservative number that I'm talking about, right? And that is where the entire crux of the problem again lies, right? I mean, you are typically looking at a resource who's ready, and you are ready to pay them higher instead of hiring people or promoting people and spending on the training, and which is again not like just the functional part of it, right? But a training that will really open their minds and sort of take them to the next level. So yes, you're right.
Right.
The other part that I sort of itching to talk about, since we're talking about marketing a little bit here, is that most of the companies, right, today want to be content driven, right? You keep hearing this word very frequently. We are a content driven company. We use content marketing as a major tool to reach out to our customers. Go to market initiatives are content based. Now the problem is, and if you look at internet, right, I mean, there are billions of, if you include the posts and videos and audio articles that come out on the internet every day, they're actually in billions, about 1.2 footprints that come out onto internet every day, right? Yeah. You as a company, you're saying that you're content rich and content driven. Who creates the content? Is it marketing who does it? Is the sales guy on the field who does it? Is it HR or finance? No, these are the people who are into part of your operations, right? The people who become the major chunk of your company are the ones who are innovating, who are leading that content culture, right? A lot of times, so happens that you go and as marketer, I go to my delivery team, the technology team, and say that I need a blog, right? I need ebook, and then they look at me, they just stare at me and they say, okay, but my job is to manage people or to lead a team or to program, right? I mean, what is to do that? And I'm sure that this situation is more or less same in most of the industries. You ask for the content, you ask them when you ask for a content, what you're essentially asking is some kind of a thought leadership, right? And you're never investing in them to become a thought leader, right? So it's like asking somebody who's depressed, hey, stop being depressed. Come on, I mean, there has to be a methodology, right? And again, heading sort of this discussion sort of back to the book, right? What we're trying to do is actually give a very practical way, a very practical approach, right? How do I, from a functional person, how do I really thrive in a culture, thrive in a situation which is dynamic and progress, which is beneficial, as somebody asked, right? It's not just beneficial for the company, but it's for me also. So again, going back to that question where that person said that there's no innovation culture, nobody's asking me to innovate anything, right? If that person sort of takes this path and starts building the content, the marketers will take notice of it, I'm sure, right? When the marketers take notice of it, you are building a direct relationship with the revenue and the profitability, right? If the marketers thrive, the business thrives, right? So that person, being a developer or being a banker or whatever, now directly contributing to the revenue of the company, right? So this is like a big discussion, and I'm sure that we wouldn't probably have all the answers in the book, but I think this is where the discussion needs to start, and people have to talk more and more as how organizations in a dynamic situation can, the people in a dynamic situation can lead to profitability and revenue contribution.
Right. Okay, I think we are exhausted by the questions, so thank you very much. Last thoughts before we end this wonderful webinar, Anand and Amit?
Yeah, Amit, you go first.
Yeah, so I think we we said quite a bit, and thank you so much for giving this opportunity with people. And we do have our LinkedIn page, U3.0, if you look for it. And we want to continue this dialogue with individuals, with HR, L&D, and the haunches of the company. As you know, in this current prevalent situation, even in a situation like COVID, right? What are the best ways to dwell your employees into a higher gear or higher thinking process? Thank you so much.
Yeah, and so to add to that, look, I would say that companies not only need to look at how I can utilize AI, how I can train people, and all those, how to do things. They need to start look at where I want to go in a longer term, and how do I use these situations, scenarios, and tools just to leverage and go above and beyond. So whether it's the AI, whether it's your employee training, they all are linked. They all are linked to higher order thinking, to growth, and all other characteristics. So I think people need to start discussion around this before even jumping into it. That's where the movement will start. So thank you so much for listening to us, and thanks everyone for bringing us to this avenue.
All right. On that note, thank you very much, Anand and Amit, and the producers, Pritha and Jasmine. Thank you very much for seamlessly making sure the webinar runs. Thank you, everyone.